Welcome to the Irish Revolution. One of the most revolutionary aspects of this period was the formation of a rival judicial system, known popularly as the Dáil courts. They were so effective that in some places even unionist people were forced to participate in them. The British legal system ground to a halt. Nothing did more damage to British legitimacy in Ireland than this development. I did an episode about the Dáil courts last year, so if you want to dive deeper, in particular with a local example from my native Monaghan, maybe go and have a look at it. While Dáil courts would not be officially established until June 1920, arbitration courts had been set up to settle rural disputes and had been quite effective for some time. The Dáil court system was as follows. Parish courts were for minor matters, cases involving debts or compensation of around £10 or less. District courts were set up for parliamentary constituencies, and circuit courts were for more serious cases, usually in excess of £100. These had travelling judges, usually qualified lawyers or at least highly educated local people. British law up until 1919 was applied, although some elements of Ireland's ancient Brehon law was accepted too. The court system would have been untenable without the IRA campaign. Courthouses up and down the country had been burnt down, and the ongoing vacuum against the RAC had left the British judicial system effectively paralysed, creating a vacuum for the Republican movement. Out of the ranks of the IRA came the rather obviously named IRP, Irish Republican Police. Let's just bear in mind that the IRA's official head count was around 15,000. That's one number among many, by the way, so if you challenge that in the comments I won't fight back, but there was nowhere near enough weapons for 15,000 men up and down the country. Similarly, I don't want to get drawn into a debate about the actual fighting strength of the IRA. Let's just say it was significantly less what they claimed on paper, and to be honest, I don't find these kind of pedantic arguments all that interesting, so if you want to contradict me, work away. I don't really care. The IRA was organised on the model of a mainstream regular army, companies, battalions, brigades, and near the end of the war, divisions. This organisation was real, with some units being much more effective than others. A quick shout out here for Cork, of course. All the same, this meant that there were a lot of presumably well-meaning yet functionally useless auxiliary types, people who would have possibly liked to play a bigger part in the conflict, but due to a lack of arms and more often than not poor local leadership, ended up on the sidelines. Well, the Dáil courts was a perfect outlet for these people, and many of them would have participated in this so-called IRP. What did the IRP do in practice though? Well, obviously they couldn't run a prison system, but they did carry out the rulings of the courts, and no doubt carried the ominous implicit threat of a retaliation from the local IRA as well. I mentioned this in my video last year, I may as well repeat it, as it's a good example. The Limerick Leader reported on a case in 1920 of two men who had disobeyed an order to rebuild a wall that they had demolished. Banished to an island off the Clare coast for 3 weeks, a party of the RAC who attempted to rescue them were pelted with stones and abused by the prisoners, who declared proudly that they were citizens of the Irish Republic and that the police had no right to interfere. So what does this example tell you? Well, if it's not already obvious, even people who fell on the wrong side of the legal decisions of this court supported its right to carry out that sentence, even when a rescue by the RAC is attempted. Now, whether that's because they were devout Irish Republicans or because they were terrified of retaliation by the IRA-IRP, well, I guess that's a matter of interpretation. But there is more than enough evidence up and down the country to suggest the courts had the kind of legitimacy that the British state so sorely lacked. What it underlined above all was the collapse of the British state in Ireland, how it had been reduced to garrisoned RAC and barracks and no longer in the community as it once had been, effectively an occupying army with no legitimacy. Speaking of a crisis of British legitimacy in Ireland, we're going to look at a curious incident in Listowel in County Kerry where an RAC mutiny took place. As I talked about in last month's episode, not all the RAC were on board with the campaign against the IRA. Many of them loathed the newcomers from England, the Black and Tans, who they saw as brutal. An RAC man in Leinster, Timothy Brennan, a member for Leinster on the RAC representative body, circulated a pamphlet that supported Dominion Home Rule and suggested that RAC no longer carry arms on duty, presumably so that they would no longer be a target for the IRA. He was summoned to Dublin Castle to repudiate this document, which he refused. Then in Listowel in County Kerry, Constable Jeremiah Mee and a few of his comrades did something truly extraordinary. They refused to garrison a small rural barracks in protest at the behaviour of a Black and Tans detachment there. In mid-June, they refused a direct order that transferred them to other stations. Mee put the issue quite starkly when he said, quote, "Whether we are going to be on the British side or the Irish side, since neutrality will be out of the question," unquote. His garrison then refused an order to hand over their barracks to the army. This mutiny brought a visit from the county inspector, and then on 19th of June by Henry Tudor himself, the so-called police advisor. Mee claimed that instead of punishing them, they were told that they could use greater force against the IRA if they wished by the Munster Commissioner Gerald Smith. They were told that martial law would be soon declared and that they could shoot suspected Republicans on sight. Smith was assassinated by the IRA the following months, by the way. The delegation failed to convince the mutineers to their point of view, and they remained in control of their garrisons. Talk about not being able to read a room. As curious as this incident undoubtedly was, it didn't spread elsewhere in the country. Indeed, Charles Townshend, my favourite historian by the way, suggests that Mee probably went too far, further than his comrades were willing to go. Mee even tried to make contact with the Republican leadership in Dublin to get support for the mutiny without success. As Townshend says, most RAC men just wanted to keep their heads down, and most were not like me. In fact, some of them probably would have supported Smith's policy of an escalation in the conflict. There were attacks in the RAC in Cork, Donegal, Offaly, Kilkenny, Tipperary, Armagh, Limerick, Clare, Wexford and Tyrone. There were also brutal scenes in Derry City which suffered riots with 19 dead. As I said last month, the events in Derry will get covered in future mega episodes covering what went on in the north. I'm not leaving it out on purpose. And also, I'm not leaving out the individual attacks and ambushes up and down the country. Like, I could probably report more on them in an individual case, but well, these episodes would be 1 hour long if I did that. So I'm just kind of picking ones here and there that I feel probably represents something about the greater situation, you know. Okay folks, that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching. A short one this month. If you feel like it, I've linked to my online tip jar in the description. Cheers and good luck.